Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Lea Lucas, and today I have a special guest. This is Dr. Townsend of KTownsend Consulting. We are very good friends. We've known each other since, for the beginning of time. And we're also in the same sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, which is a Black sorority. And we are from the same hometown, my former hometown, which is Dayton, Ohio. And she was so gracious enough to come in and talk about the work that she does related to psychology and work. And so, Dr. Townsend, I just want to say, welcome. Aloha.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas. I'm so excited to be here. Okay, so two things. I am not originally from Dayton, although I've been here long enough. And my friends say I know more people in Dayton than the native Daytonians. I'm actually from Kentucky, but I came to Ohio to go to grad school at The Ohio State University. The other interesting thing, and I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but when your name is Dr., but you're not a medical doctor, everybody assumes you are a psychologist.
Right. Exactly.
And one of my neighbors had a daughter that used to babysit for us when my girls were younger. And so I called to ask if her daughter could babysit for me. And she said, well, I'll ask her, but Friday's her birthday. And I was like, oh no, if it's her birthday, no need, don't ask her. I don't want to infringe on her birthday activities. And she said, well, since you're a psychologist, I guess you know that for sure. So I was like, I'm not a psychologist. It's a PhD in organizational leadership. So I cannot give you any complimentary counseling. So I always wanted to say that because I can't offer any therapy. I come to you for that.
That's correct. And that's true. And this is a perfect example of, when we talk about PhDs and PsyDs, and I always in my Psych 100 class tell students that you can get a PhD in almost every profession. And it's a terminal degree for that specialized area. And so you have your terminal degree PhD in your specialized area, but you do a lot of work. I really want to know about the kind of work you do, how you got started, how did KTownsend come about?
Well, my background is actually in higher education. I worked in higher education for 13 years, and I worked primarily with underrepresented students. And my role was to identify high potential students, help them to make a successful transition from high school to college. And then once they made it to college, help them to successfully matriculate. I believe that a lot of institutions of higher learning make a commitment to recruiting diverse students, but they don't always have the programs and services in place to make sure those students can successfully navigate the university and come out on the other end with a degree. So that was my job, my purpose, my role. And beyond that, it was something I was very passionate about. And as I was completing my doctorate, I was really looking for my next opportunity at the university, and it wasn't there. And someone told me sometimes in order to move up, you have to move out. And so I made a decision that I was going to take a leap of faith and start this consulting practice. Initially, I was doing a lot of work around leadership and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And 21 and a half years later, I'm still doing a lot of work around leadership, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Additionally, I do programs for women leaders because I have observed over my career that women often do so much for so many, but they forget to do those things for themselves. And you can't be a successful leader, you can't be a successful contributor if you are not doing things to promote personal self-care. One of the things that I've seen over the past couple of years because of the pandemic is now we're having more conversations about emotional wellness and mental health and self-care. And it's long overdue. So as much as possible, when I can incorporate that into the work that I do, I want to do that. I feel very blessed that I get to talk with high-level leaders. And when I'm having conversations, it's not just about how can I help John Smith, hit the numbers, hit our performance goals, and help to be more profitable. I want to know, what do we need to do to help leaders be the best versions of themselves? So I work with leaders to create inclusive environments and build high performing teams so that they can more effectively and efficiently do the work that we as customers and consumers need them to do.
Fantastic. I think the current world situation has made a shift into this idea of what the workplace is supposed to be, how we lead in the workplace, how organizations are moving toward more flexibility, moving towards change, moving towards the importance of honoring and recognizing employees' concerns. And I think this is a good thing. This is a very good thing. Even though we have been doing that in the past, I think sometimes there has been some resistance for it because they didn't necessarily see the need for it. What the current world situation has done is it has pushed forward the need to really understand the importance of these things. Now, in your experience, what have you found to be, the best leadership style or the characteristics of leaders? What kind of organizations tend to create synergy in their leadership? Do you have any insights on that?
Well, I really think the most effective leaders are those who are committed to, number one, knowing who their team members are, knowing what they are good at, and knowing what they want to be good at. I was talking to a COO recently, and I said, when was the last time you asked your team members, is there anything that you would like to do for our organization that you haven't been asked to do? And she was like, wow, I've never asked that question. And in her leadership role, she was feeling that there were so many things on her plate that she couldn't function at the highest level. But when she posed that question to her staff, there were two people who raised their hand and said, this is something I'd really like to do for our organization. And that leader was able to delegate that role to that person, so they were able to contribute to the organization in a way that they've never been able to do before. So they felt empowered and valued and affirmed. So it was a win-win. It was a win for the leader. Now there's something off my plate. It was a win for the contributor. Now's a way I can shine that I haven't been able to do before. And it was a win for the organization. So I think leaders need to know who their team members are. They need to know how they can contribute. They need to know what they're passionate about. Les Brown talks about people who play to play versus people who play to win. People who play to play come to work and they do just enough to get by. They're probably not going to come early. They're not going to stay late. They're not going to raise their hand for extra responsibilities. But people who play to win, they are, how can I be a better contributor? How can I make a difference? I'm going to come early. I'm going to stay late. I'm going to be a person who figures out how to help our team win. And leaders need to create teams where people are playing to win, not just playing to play. But that starts with knowing who I am as a leader, knowing what my strengths are, and also knowing what my weaknesses are, and not being afraid of that, but creating a team that can build me up in those areas where I'm not the best. My husband laughed at me some months ago because we were talking about Excel spreadsheets. Now, don't tell anybody, Dr. Lucas, but I don't know how to do an Excel spreadsheet. I'm intimidated by all those graphs and numbers and formulas. I don't know how to do it. And so he was saying,
don't feel bad. I just know the basics too. So
he said, I can't believe you don't know how to do an Excel spreadsheet. I said, I don't, but I can create content for a workshop and I can write a speech really quickly. I know what my superpowers are. So leaders need to know what their superpowers are and then find people on their teams who can step in that place and fill the gap. So unapologetically, I can operate in my bliss and then I can let you operate in yours. So that's important. I think leaders need to know again, who they are, and they need to recognize the people on their teams. There are so many times organizations say, okay, we need to do the Myers-Briggs, and we do these type indicators, and we know what we are. I don't know all the A, B, C, D, E, F, Gs of what I am. I know I'm an extrovert. The other stuff I can't remember. But if I know that I'm an extrovert, I should also be able to recognize the introverts. And I need to be able to adjust my way of leading when I'm working with those people who have a different style. All too often, people who are introverts are overlooked because they're quiet, they're thinking. They may not contribute in the large staff meeting because they're processing. As a leader, I need to recognize that not as a weakness, but as a strength. I'm the type of person who speaks first and thinks later, which can get me in trouble. And other folks think first and then speak. But all of these people can contribute to a winning team. That's something that leaders need to really be aware of. Leaders need to be willing to serve. You know, we've had conversations about being a servant leader. I need to demonstrate to my team members what that looks like, that I'm not above doing anything that I'm asking you to do. And again, just back to the whole self-care piece, I think leaders need to understand that self-care is important, and they need to model it, and they need to create an environment where people know that they can take that time for self-care.
Exactly. I like the fact that you said the contrast between extroversion and introverted employees, because you're absolutely right. I'm E off the chain. I'm extroverted off the chain. And so I'm the one that's always running my mouth and saying things and have something to say. And the introverted colleague or the introverted person takes it all in, and then they can summarize and be reflective of what has just taken place, versus us extroverts. We're so busy in the moment, sometimes we miss things. And so even with myself personally, sometimes I have to rein myself in a little bit and say, pull your inner introvert out so you can grasp and hear some things. That has been really helpful as an extrovert doing Zoom, because you mute yourself, you have to pay attention and listen, and it has developed my inner introvert to come out and be more introspective. So I think that's an excellent point that you bring to the table. Now, in relationship to diversity, because I know you've done diversity work, how has diversity work changed? What's the trends? What is happening in that area now with organizations?
Well, it's interesting that you asked that question, especially at the time and place we are right now. So I've done this work for 20 plus years. And at the beginning of every year, I make what I call my hot list. And my hot list is the list of companies that I want to work with, my dream companies. And about 2 years ago, at the top of 2020, I made my list, and I was making calls and sending information. And it was interesting that so many organizations were saying, well, we're good. We don't have any issues. We're doing fine. Thank you so much. Okay, I'll just keep it moving. And then on May 25th, because everybody was at home as a result of a global pandemic, sitting in front of our televisions, we saw George Floyd murdered. And Dr. Lucas, I cannot tell you how quickly my phone started to ring. And all of a sudden, the organizations that said, we're fine, we're good, it was like, hey, we need to schedule some time to talk with you, and we'd like to launch a DEI program. So one of the things that has changed is now diversity, equity, and inclusion is important. It's a priority. I own my own business, but if I wanted to have a role as a chief diversity officer, I could have one because now it seems to be important and relevant and timely. My hope is that this momentum and this interest will continue. And it's not just something that we're focused on right now because this incident occurred. And I can look at organizations and determine which ones are serious and which ones aren't. If your organization is only talking about diversity because what happened on May 25th, 2020, then the likelihood of it being sustainable is slim to none. Organizations that are committed to diversity commit the resources to diversity. Years ago, when I worked at The Ohio State University, I worked in what at that time was called the Office of Minority Affairs. Now, I believe it's the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. But I had the great honor to work with Dr. Frank Hale, who was the Vice Provost for Minority Affairs. And Dr. Hale would always say, commitment without cash is counterfeit. So as organizations look at their DEI programs, the question is, how committed are you? Is there a budget? Are there resources? And when I say resources, I mean financial and fiscal, but also people. Do you have one person in your diversity office for an organization of thousands of people? What support does that person have in order to be successful? What are your short-term and long-term goals? Are you doing something beyond training? Because I like to call it education, not training. Someone told me you train dogs, you educate people. Are you doing something beyond training? Because people in your organization will say, you know what, I can sit through this diversity training class and then go back to life as usual. What happens after the training? I want there to be transformation, not just training. So organizations that are serious about this work are making serious investments of time, of money, of resources, and making it a part of their strategic plan. Because this is the other thing I know. As long as there's someone who's driving diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's a priority. But if the person who's driving it decides to retire, decides to move on to another organization, heck, hits the Powerball, mega bucks, and decides to move to the south of France, who is the driver? If it's not a part of your strategy, if it's not a part of your mission, vision, values, and goals, then it's not going to have the level of sustainability that is required to keep that momentum going.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I like the fact that you said the difference between education and training, because we hear a lot about training. I even have a chapter in the book I'm using that talks about training. And I like that kind of shift of thinking in terms of we're educating, we're not necessarily training, even though training has a long-standing definition in relationship to kind of organizational work. Now,
yeah, and I can't take credit for that little soundbite. Actually, I was told that by Jane Elliott. Many people know Jane Elliott from the Brown Eye, Blue Eyes experiment, and I had an opportunity to meet her. And I was just so excited, like a little kid seeing a celebrity. And I was like, oh, Mrs. Elliott, I love your work. And I use it and I do diversity training. And she was the one, she said, She said, we train dogs, we educate people. And so I adopted that and I used that because it's so true.
Yeah, it is very, very true. Very, very true. Even my psychology channel is Psychology for the Masses. So, you know, my goal and objective is to reach a broad net of folks and give them the diversity of psychology. So what about performance? Do you do any work around performance appraisal, performance work in your work in the past or in the near future or the present? Have you done anything about evaluation of employees? with
I
management?
that is not my area of expertise,
Okay.
but what I'm suggesting to many of my clients is that, especially as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, is that built into how you are evaluating performance? Because we can say we value diversity, and I like to follow that up with we value diversity, therefore we will. So if it is important and if it's a priority, are we asking our leaders, how are you incorporating this into the work that you do? And that can then become a part of the performance evaluation or the performance appraisals. It's easy for me to say, but if I'm not demonstrating that in the work that I do, if I'm not looking at my team members and going, how reflective are we of the communities where we're located, the customers and clients that we serve? Because if we're not reflecting that, then we really aren't doing what we could do as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Okay. I just want to switch gears a little bit and dive into your experiences as an entrepreneur, as having your own consulting firm, and how that is going in in 2021, 2022, because that has been a the Great Resignation is a term that's being thrown out there. You've been working independently way before the Great Resignation, but how do you see the marketplace and career wise and the things that you do as an entrepreneur, as a independent person working for thyself?
First of all, I think a lot of people say, oh, it must be wonderful working for yourself and you don't have a boss. And I say, well, actually, every client I work for is my boss. So if I'm going to be able to do the work, I have to respond to the unique needs of every client that I serve. So that's a misconception that I don't have a boss. I have multiple bosses, but I do have the freedom and the flexibility to choose who I work with and who I work for. And that's important to me. As it relates to this diversity work, I don't take every project because I've learned to be able to quickly assess what the level of commitment is. And I'm asking questions that help me to determine if someone is compliant or committed. So that is something that I get to do as an entrepreneur. The other thing I believe people think is when you own your own business, it's this freedom and it's easy and it's, just bonbons and red wine. And I will tell you, I kind of thought that when I first started, Dr. Lucas, that I could work when I wanted to work. And if I didn't want to work, I wouldn't have to work. But I quickly realized, unlike when I worked at the university, if I took a sick day, if I took a vacation day, if I took a personal day, at the end of the month, my check looked exactly the same. But when I started working for Karen Townsend, if I didn't work, she didn't pay me. So for those people who just want to, throw their hat in the entrepreneurial ring, there's work that you have to do. But the great thing about it is you get to choose the work. You get to decide what projects to take on. I used to tell my students that if you find a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And I feel very, very blessed that what I do doesn't feel like work. It just feels like I'm living my dream. I'm walking in my purpose. I'm passionate about the things that I do. I think for leaders, whether you are an intrapreneur, which is somebody who works inside an organization, or an entrepreneur, I think you need to find work that feeds your passion. Identify what you are good at and become the best in those areas. Leverage your expertise. I just shared with someone today, when I was in the first grade, I got in trouble for talking too much. And that was back a long time ago when God was young and the earth was new, when they did corporal punishment. Back in the days when you got swatted on your backside, okay? That's how old I am. That's how old I am. I often wish I could find my first grade teacher to tell her, I got in trouble for talking, but now people pay me to talk. So
there it is.
if you're going to be an entrepreneur, find something that you love, find something that you're good at. I would never launch a business doing Excel spreadsheets. Don't know how to do it, don't like it. But if I can share my wisdom, my passion, my expertise, then that's a great day for me. And I think, again, back to leaders need to know who they are and they need to know who their people are. And I think that's transferable whether you work for an organization or whether you work for yourself.
Absolutely. I'm going to end it with those very wise words. And I really want to say thank you for taking this time to talk to me and my students and give us some insight into the work that you do and the change that you are a catalyst of. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lucas.